Good morning, everyone. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, there has been a grave government warning. Grave government warning hit the United Kingdom last night, this morning. Two articles I'm going to share with you guys, and I'm going to show you guys how this is going to inevitably usher in a migrant police force, whereby we have outsourced our security to private security companies, and those private security companies, through licensing, remember, I've lived through this already. I lived through this in the security industry when when if you were an ex-special forces guy, you could go and get a job working as a security, private security operator, as a bodyguard doing diplomatic security. Now, it's very difficult to do that because you have to have all these licenses. You have to have licenses for this and licenses for that. So that is the direction of travel we are heading at the moment, you know, guys. I've said this before, and I've done videos whereby there would be a not migrant police force, private security companies, right? Private security companies in support of the police. And we've seen this today. And these private security companies that are in support of the police, well, they can employ whoever they want, can't they? Because they're private security companies. And this is how it will start. Mark my words, ladies and gentlemen, before I come on to my opening monologue, this is how, in fact, let me put the chat on. This is how it will start. It will start with, we're just employing private security companies to help fill the backlog because there's not enough police officers. And these private security companies, I don't know, whoever, you know, Raven Security, Raven Risk Management. Raven Risk Management will go out there and they will look at the scenario. They will then, if needs be, they will call in real police officers. But that's where it starts, and it will be hailed as a success. And then they'll give the private security companies, they'll say, well, you know what? We've got these private security companies going out there, but we you know, I think like if they could detain people, that'd be great. And then people would say, oh, but you know, only the police can arrest somebody. They'll say, remember, this is not arrest. Only a police officer can arrest. This is detention. And you know what? If you're held down on the floor with handcuffs on, it pretty much feels like an arrest, right? It would pretty much feel like an arrest. Right. So let me share the articles I'm talking about because this has hit the headline today. There's a British FBI force. Look, I'll share this with you. I'll just scoop through it real quick, and then I'll come on to the. I will give you guys my my thoughts on this and how this is going to lead to a migrant police officers operating in the United Kingdom. The British FBI to take over terror and fraud problems in reforms to the police. Now, it's the main thing here is this one. Every police officer in England and Wales will have to have a license to practice. Okay, so hear me out, right? Hear me out. This to me is absurd, right? This means that police officers themselves, well, you know, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but as far as I'm concerned, this means police officers themselves will have to keep that up to date. Now, what happens, right? What happens if a police officer, and this is where it will go, right? If a police officer is licensed as a licensed police officer, yet he's not working for the police force, what happens then? Is he still able to make those arrests because he's still licensed? And that's how it's going to move into a privatization of the police force, guys. You know, this is it. We all think there's going to be like some massive move and like all these, like, we all think there's going to be the stormtroopers all of a sudden marching down in the white and black uniforms. No, it just happens slowly. It just happens slowly. And it happens that slow. People don't notice, but that is the first breadcrumb, ladies and gentlemen. So right now, our police force... Our public servants sworn in, accountable to the Crown and the community. Now, we can argue with that, right? We can argue with that. But slap a mandatory license on them like doctors or lawyers, and suddenly you've turned police into a regulated profession where states can dictate who wears the uniform, who keeps it, and under what conditions they can renew it. Officers will have to jump through endless hoops, tests, ongoing training modules, probably DEI checklists and work compliances, boxes just to say licensed. Fail to tick them and you are out or you are sacked, unable to practice. Now, the flip side of that coin is what happens when you're licensed? And these licensing companies, they will be independent because they have to be independent. So now we're brewing a situation in the United Kingdom where, you know, you're a licensed police officer. Yeah, but I'm not working for the police force. I'm working for the private police force. Oh, right. Okay. Because you guys do know that there are private ambulances, right? You guys do know that there are private healthcare operating for the NHS, right? You guys do know that. It just happens slowly and nobody notices. And who's going to step in when the public sector police are thinned out, demoralized, or straight up short-staffed? Because the good old school coppers can't stomach the bureaucracy or get struck off for, you know, or they can get struck off for wrong think. Can you imagine wrong think when the police officers get wrong think and they're struck off? This is where we're going. We are going down a road now where police officers no longer worry about policing, they worry about ticking boxes. And I've seen this. I've literally lived through this with the security industry. So who's going to step in when those police officers are thinned out, demoralized, or straight up struck off? Private police forces, that's who. Security firms, corporate outfits, maybe even foreign-owned companies. And I would say there will be a lot of foreign-owned companies with their own agendas, ready to bid for contracts. They'll hire their own licensed. Remember, it's all about licensing now, guys. Licenses. They'll hire their own licensed operatives because once this thing goes out and it's and it's a qualification and it's a license, then that license is then open to everybody, right? Of course, it won't start like that, but that's how it will end. They'll be cheaper, less accountable, no pesky public oversight. We've already got private security everywhere. And look, when I talk about private security, imagine walking into your supermarket now, right? Just visualize it. Everybody, right? Wherever you are, I know the answer is going to be the same to everyone, right? Visualize the security guard on, I don't know, your supermarket. What does he look like? What would you say his first language was? You see where I'm going? You know, we've like I said, the private security everywhere at the moment, guarding buildings, events, some patrolling estates, supermarkets, literally everywhere. This license system normalizes the idea that policing is just another credential service you can outsource. That's the reality, guys. Okay, we're outsourcing our policing right now. The government dressed it up as modernization. What did I say this would happen? Like when I heard, what's his name? I can't remember his name. The police chief, whatever his name is. He looks like a character from Simpsons. Mark, is it Mark? I don't know. The Met police chief, basically. He came out and he said there needs to be a great shake-up of the police force. And I did a video and I said, this police shake-up is going to mean private securities, and those private security firms are going to, employ whoever they want, right? As long as they've got that license. Like I said, the government has dressed this up as modernization, bringing in a world class of talent, shaking up the old structures. But it's really about control and cost cutting. Now, if you think, right, the next time there's a scandal, a gang, a gang or whatever, name your scandal. We get plenty in the United Kingdom. It's very easy for the government to say, yes, this was Raven Risk Management and we fired them now. No more contracts to Raven Risk Management. No, it's all their fault. Very easy to do that. But guess what? Raven Risk Management just swaps their board of directors around and now they're Raven Security Consultancy, and just everybody changes their t-shirt. That's literally what happens. They're going to be centralizing the big stuff into this new national police service so-called the British FBI, while burdening local forces with red tape that drives real officers away. And guys, look, I've lived through this. I've lived through this in the security industry. Then when everyday crime like shoplifting and antisocial behavior gets worse because the streets aren't properly patrolled, who's going to fill them? Who is like? Can you imagine it now? Right, when crime gets worse because officers don't want to go out and make an arrest now. Why? Because like, I don't know, it's part of their DEI and part of their licensing and part of all that. They're too busy filling their licensing forms in. Who's going to fill that gap, ladies and gentlemen? Who do you think is going to fill that gap? Private contractors. That's who. I was going to say private military contractors. Private police contractors. PPCs. PPCs will fill that gap. Licensed by the same regime that sidelined the traditional force. Same licensing ticks in the boxes. So as far as anyone's concerned, these are just as good. We're real police too. This isn't reform. This is the thin end of a wedge towards the two-tier system where state keeps the monopoly on violence, terror, and gangs, but hands over the streets to profit-driven private companies. And those ordinary people, well, we're the ones that we're paying twice because we're going to be paying for a police force and we're going to be paying with the crime rate going up. Well, 3 times actually. And we're going to be paying with the, we're going to be paying the private security companies. And then what happens? Literally, then what happens? Do you know what? Here's one. I didn't even think about this. What happens then when, you get a group of bad people? I should have started with this. What happens then when you get a group of bad people, right? And those bad people are all licensed, because all you need, look, I've said this many times. Those people who come over from that gas. Give me a second. I need to turn this gas off. So, a couple of times I've said this in certain parts of the world, stoning is absolutely legal. It's a legal form of punishment under Sharia, right? So people could have, some people may have conducted stonings themselves, come to the United Kingdom. They've got no criminal record. They might have finished 2, 3, 4, 5 people off. They ain't got no criminal record because it's not illegal in that country. So now we've got people who've got that frame of mind. And because they've got no criminal record in the United Kingdom, yep, you can be a police officer. Yeah, you can see where this is going, right? This licensing thing, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be an absolute disaster. It is. It's going to be an absolute disaster. It's going to be crazy. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're joining me for the first time, I am talking about the grave news. It's been official. It's been, when was it? Oh, no, this was yesterday, actually. Updated 2 hours ago. So this was an article released yesterday. Excuse me. Let me share it, actually. So yesterday, this article was released, and it's talking about British FBI to take over terror and fraud probes in reforms to police. Now, if you read the article, this is the bit down here. Every police officer... Oh, look at, what, the number of police forces in England will be significantly cut. Every police officer, guys, it's crazy. This is going to bring in private security companies. I promise you. Every police officer in England and Wales will have a license to practice. Okay. And then if you look at this, police officers will be told they must get a license or face dismissal. And this article talks about it. And what I'm saying, is that the same thumbnail? No. And what I'm saying to you guys is this is going to bring in private security companies that are only loyal to the person that pays them, right? That's what happens. That is literally what happens. Remember, I've seen this. I've worked in the military, right? I have. I've worked in private military companies, right? I know the differences. And that's where we're going. That is where we are going. It looks crazy, guys. It looks crazy. Right. Good morning, everyone. Millie Mono is saying licensed Sharia police is where we're heading. I mean, maybe. Yeah. I mean, you can see it, right? You can see it. So once you start this licensing, right? Once you start this licensing, it's a terrible idea because what happens is, people think, oh, okay, so all the police officers have to do this course now, right? Out of their own pockets. Yes. And it might start off as like 100 quid or whatever, like 100 quid, you know, and then I don't know, probably 500 quid, call it. So you have to do a course for 500 quid, and you have to do, you know, you have to fill out these forms and whatever, and, you know, get your police license, right? And then someone who's making money will think, if only there was one more course, like if we could do another license, if we could give them another license and they could keep that, and then it will just build and build and build and build. And the way it builds is because, I mean, I guess it is through corruption, but it's through greed more than corruption. Because there'll be some legislator in government and there'll be some private security company going up to him and saying, hey, mate, you know, if you pass this law here, yeah, like I can give you a job. I can give you I can give you like a retainer for the next 5 years. And he's like, what? He's like, yeah, I'll give you like, you know, a retainer because that's how politicians do it, right? Allegedly, for entertainment purposes. You know, people think that politicians are taking these big sums of money. They're not. What they will do is they will say I was the Right Honourable Raven. Say I was a Right Honourable Raven. And somebody came up to me and, like, I don't know, Boeing or someone. They said, hey, Sean, so we like your work. We want to sponsor you, and we want to get you on the board of our experts or something. They would then pay me a small retainer, maybe $1,000, maybe $2,000 a month, and I do nothing. On the bank accounts, there's nothing there, right? It's $2,000. Well, $2,000 from Boeing. Yeah, I do some work for them. Nobody really questions it. But that will go for maybe 5 or 10 years and they won't do anything. So now you see how that money builds up, right? But nobody ever notices it. It's like you do things, like if you do things slowly and small, nobody notices. But if they would say, right, we're going to give this guy $100,000, $500,000, boom, it's in your bank account, there would be a massive uproar, right? It wouldn't be declared. People would be so, oh, why is this not being declared? But if you do it slowly over years, and it's better for all parties to do that, right? Think about it. You know, when you get elected, you've got 4 years and you don't have to do anything, right? So in that 4 years, you know you can't get sacked. So why wouldn't you bridge up all this money? And you don't just, you know, these guys don't just do it for one company, they do it for several companies, and that's how the money gets in. Natalie is saying, imagine paying a license fee for these officers. It's crackers. Darren Lamont is saying there are already Sharia security in the main Muslim areas. I didn't realize that. I guess they can do whatever they want, right? Now, whether they'll have like legal backing on that, I don't know. Destiny Workman is saying security companies have already been given a contract to work for the police, and yes, I do know. Okay, well, if it's all, what I'm talking about here is the mass implementation of private security companies now. And look, guys, we're seeing it here. That key word there, licensing. Hang on, let me read it again. Every officer in England and Wales will have to have a license to practice. So when you've got your license to practice, where is this license going to come from? If that license, right? So here's the thing. If that license comes from the government, then it's no, that's wrong. Sorry. If that license comes from the police force itself, it's pointless because they're self-auditing, right? So it has to be an independent body. It has to be. It absolutely has to be an independent body. You can't, you can't audit yourself, right? You can't give yourself the license. So it has to be outside of the police office, outside of the police service. So that means this is going to be a private company doing that. And once that listen, guys, I'll let you guys into a little secret real quick. What is the one purpose of a private limited company? The one purpose for a private company. It's to make as much money as humanly possible, as quickly as possible. That's it. Goods and services are a secondary option. That's the reality. If you can make as much money as possible and you don't have to provide any goods or services, that's ticking the box, right? So when you're outsourcing these things to private companies, it's not gonna go well. Right, listen, guys, I'm jumping down to the bottom. Suzanne is saying Hawk Hills UK Resilience Academy training run by Serco, Sean. I don't know what that means. I don't know. Listen, guys, just a quick one. April Lee has just put something on the bottom there, and she said, this like teaching, so it will be an independent body. Yeah, it always has to be, they have to be independent bodies. They have to be independent bodies. So what happens is, like you're teaching, April, and I don't know how it works in teaching, but when you get these independent bodies and you have to be licensed to them, you have to pay them. And it won't just be one license. It will start with one license, and then it'll be like, oh well, what we need to do now is we need to have another license because we found problems, and we need to have 2 licenses, then 3 licenses, then 4 licenses. Before you know it, police officers will just be looking to get licenses. Michael, I'm not deleting any comments, mate. Michael, I don't delete any comments. Michael, I don't delete any comments, so I don't know what your comment is. But look, let me get that back up. I've talked about this a couple of times, right? And I know this is April Lee just reminded me there when she put this. She said independent body, and I remembered last night I watched Independence Day. It was on like one of the Freeview channels. So last night I watched Independence Day, guys. I promise you. You know when I said aliens are coming? I wasn't lying. I was not lying. That movie, Independence Day, if you watch it again and look at the propaganda, look at the programming in Independence Day, it's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. You've got everything in it. I will talk about that later on, though. I'll do a separate video on that. April Lee is saying it's £3,000 now. Hang on a minute. Hang on. Right, we need to get to the bottom of this. Right, April Lee. Are you saying that it's £3,000 to register as a teacher? Is that what you're saying? So every year, every teacher has to pay £3,000. Is that what we're saying? Guys, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'll wait for April Lee to get back. Staple Endeavour saying we have a Batman bridge here in the Northern Tamar. And he went, oh God, that's disgusting. Okay. I don't know what a Batman bridge is, and I think it's disgusting if anybody unalives anyone. And April Lee is saying yes. Wow, April, can I listen, guys? I'm genuinely fascinated by this. Right, April, can you just was it always 3,000? Or did that start? Was it like, oh, it's just going to be 500 quid, then 750, then a little bit because that's what private companies do, right? And when these things are not internal, when these things are separate bodies, this is what happens, guys. Policing's pretty much over. Gerald of Riviera is saying British farmers are blocking transport hubs. Doesn't seem to have made the news, but were lorries backed up for miles. Listen, I'm absolutely in support of British farmers. I am. We live in a semi-rural area. I did like a bit of a live stream a while ago, and I was just riding around on the lawnmower. It was a bit wild. But the farmers, like rain, sleet, snow, they're out plowing those fields till like midnight or gone midnight, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. There's the tractors driving around. And honestly, and they don't make that much money. I think what we should be able to do is I think everybody should be able to go and buy direct from the farmers. I know a lot of people don't. Listen, I've got nothing against people, right, who say Noogle instead of noodle, right? I'm not saying anything against anyone who says Noogle instead of noodle, but there is no word as Noogle, right? Okay, there's no word as Noogle. I was in the supermarket the other day, B&M, I walked in, right, and I just thought, oh, I hope there's nobody in here talking about noodles. And as soon as I got in, there was a young couple, and the woman, who I perceived to be female, said to the male, who I perceived to be male, said, "What's 18 plus 5?" And I just thought, wow. And the guy said, "I don't know." And I was just like, wow. I mean, maybe the Russians need to come. But what I'm getting at here is, like, some people think, like, don't want to go and buy from the farmer because they just get raw food, right? You just get like a bag of potatoes that are covered in mud. What's wrong with that? Literally, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that sort of fresh stuff? If you go like, if you go Eastern Europe, especially Ukraine, like when I was out in Donetsk, like that's literally how you go to the store. You go to the store and they've just got like a box of muddy potatoes and you forage through them, and that's how I do think people should buy direct from farmers. I do. I think farmers should be able to buy direct. Baron is saying morning. Good morning to you, Baron. Gerald Riviera is saying British teachers are paid 30,000 for a 6-month year. Still wouldn't want to do it though, unless I was a British only school. Yeah, I did. So I did some work in a school when I first started my company in the technology industry, and honestly, I did a week at this school. Was it a week or was it? I think it was a week. Yeah. I did a week at this school, and honestly, it was the most stressful time I've ever had. I couldn't be a teacher. Honestly, it was so stressful. You go in there, right, and there's like 30. So first of all, I'm like, yeah, I teach military all the time. I've got no trouble with I don't know, 11-year-old, 12-year-old kids or whatever. So I went in and yeah, you've got like all these faces looking at you, these little faces, and like some of them are naughty, some of them are really tentative, and like it's really difficult because you see you're standing there as the teacher and you're seeing kids and you're like, right, you're a little shit, right? And you're seeing these other ones, you're thinking, right, you're really listening, and you're trying to teach and get as much information into those kids as possible, but it's really difficult. Honestly, being a teacher is so difficult. Cindy Archer is saying recently in Indonesia, the military has taken over most of the food production. Is that going to happen here? I can't see that. I really can't see that. We don't have the numbers. We don't have the numbers in the military. I mean, how would that happen? Listen, with food, right? I think everybody should grow their own food. I know I'm a bit of a hypocrite saying this because, like, the year before last, you know what? A couple of years ago, we grew potatoes. It was like it was fantastic. You know, you get these big, not orange. You get these big leaves that come up, and then you get like these little flowers, and then they die, and then the potatoes are ready, and you know when the potatoes are ready because the flowers have died. And we got loads of potatoes. So the next year I thought, you know what, we are gonna have tomatoes. I thought we are gonna have Tommy tomatoes. Honestly, it was the worst experience of my life. I don't even think we got one tomato. It was ridiculous. So last year we didn't grow anything, but I think we're going to try and grow something again this year. I think everybody needs to grow stuff, guys. Everybody needs to grow food. Sausages is saying kids are stressful. Little devils, they are, the little devils. And Andrew Rushton is saying, how is it actually possible for farmers to make much money? Must be some serious incompetence. They're practically making money out of nothing. So they're not making money out of nothing, right? How much does it cost to run and service a combine harvester? I mean, those things are like £500,000 at least. How much does it cost to service your vehicles? You know, that's not for free. So, like, yes, if you want to grow and put some, grow. If you want to go and grow some potatoes in your garden, you're making them for pretty much nothing, right? If you want to do that on an industrial scale, You've then got to package them, you've then got to ship them. So there's a lot of costs, additional costs to this, rather, and it's not just growing things out of the ground, which it is, but then you've got to process it, right? Band again is saying, I heard a teacher. Band again is saying, I heard a UK teacher said kids not only toilet school trained, but not speaking a word of English, and some are not speaking at all. Yeah, look, that we all know, don't we? We all know that there is a certain group of people who are just banging out kids as a financial benefit, right? We know that. We know that's happening. Andrew Rushton is saying, sounds like they need to live within their means. I think you're absolutely right. Do you know what? So hang on, let me get Andrew's comments. Hang on. So Andrew says, how is it actually possible for farmers not to make much money? Must be some serious incompetence. They practically make money out of nothing. And I said to him, it's the tractors, it's the combine harvesters, it's the storage, it's the packaging, it's the shipping of those goods, right? It's the staff, it's paying all those people. Because I think Andrew Rushton's worried about farmers making too much money. And he said, sounds like they need to live within their means. And you know what, actually, I think you're absolutely right. I think all farmers should get rid of the combine harvesters. They should do everything by hand, and they shouldn't employ any staff. Let's see how much food we get. I don't know. Maybe we'll get more. Right, I'm going to jump back onto the main crux of this, guys, in a second. The government tell farmers to put clean waste on their land. Then 2 years later, there's microchips and all sorts in the ground. Your cat sell to Asda or other supermarkets contaminate? Can't sell to Asda or other supermarkets. Right. Do you know what? I'm going to go maybe today. What time is it? Because you guys are fantastic, right? And I got you, fam. I'm going to go to my local farmer. I'm going to knock on his door. I'm going to say, excuse me, mate. Can I buy product from you? And I'm going to see what he says. I'm just going to go and I'm not going to knock on his door. I know where his office is. I'm going to go to my local farmer today or tomorrow, right? And I'm just going to go up to him. I'm going to say, mate, can I buy shit from you? Because, I want to buy direct from my farmer. And I'm going to ask him, what the deal is, and I'll let you guys know what he says. Right, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys are on, first of all, if you're on, you're fantastic. We are talking about the new government warning, the British FBI that the government have announced, and I'm putting it to you guys that this will inevitably lead to private security firms taking over work from the police force. That's what I'm saying. I will. I've got some right. And where are we? I've totally forgot. Right. Okay. So I want to talk about this licensing. Okay. Now, where do I go with this? I mean, I've spoke about this before, right? April Lee's talking about licensing, being licensed as a teacher, right? And it costs April Lee £3,000 a year to get her license. Now, the police in the United Kingdom have announced, the Shabana Mahmood has now opened up licensing practices to the police, just like doctors, solicitors, or teachers. They'll have to keep proving they've got the right training, the right skills, especially on things like violence against women and girls, or they'll be shown the door. Sounds sensible on paper, right? On paper, these things always sound sensible, but the reality is a little bit darker. This is the thin end, guys. It is. It's the thin end of that wedge, and it's going to drive us towards private police forces, private security forces, call them what you want. I don't know what the name is, but basically this is what's going to happen. You're going to have Mohammed and Abdul, right? Because they've got their licenses. They are going to be providing security services now. That's what's going to happen. That is what's going to happen. I don't know what they're going to be called. Police assistant officers, private assistant officers. I don't know what they're going to call them, but that's what's coming. So think about it. Once you've got that system, you know, where that state decides who's wearing the who's wearing the uniform, you can do this electronically, right? Because I'm going to assume, April Lee, that your documents are kept online somewhere in some database that you log on to, you know. So imagine that you've got years of service, all right? You have got absolutely years of service. You've never done anything wrong. You're a fantastic police officer. You are not corrupt, but you don't have a license. Now, somebody who's filled out the right documentation, maybe lied on a credential or maybe committed crimes in another country, they're straight in. The big private security firms, you know, the ones that are already guarding shopping centres, events, private estates, hospitals, supermarkets, they'll say, look, we've got licensed ex-officers. That's how it's going to start, guys. That's how it will start. They'll say, listen, Britain, we've got the solution. We've actually got 100 already licensed ex-officers on our books. Why don't we fill in the gaps? They've got the same qualification as you guys. Yeah. Once they get that little contract, this is how it'll start. And I know because I've seen this. Then they'll say, oh, we're doing such a good job, but our officers their license is up in a year, so we're going to have to renew them. So we're going to have new legislation to let private citizens now be licensed. I promise you guys, this is coming. They'll say they're properly licensed, properly trained, ex-officers, vetted by the government, will pay for the full state police. You know, why pay for a full state police when you can hire it at half the price? Councils that are strapped for cash, wealthy neighborhoods, big businesses. Guys, I promise you, this is pushing us towards 15-minute cities, private police forces. Can you not see it coming? Can you not see it coming now? Where if you've got a certain amount of money, you get to live in the what's that word? Elysium? Is that the movie with Matt Damon? Fantastic movie. That movie, Elysium, that bad guy did it for me. He was brilliant. He was more South African than South Africans. Yeah, you come here, bro. Get here. Yeah, you like it, don't you? Come here. Look, we got license. We have a license fees here, and we are properly trained. We are properly trained South African veterans. We are vetted by the government, and we will come. We can come and give you security. Yeah, we come and give you security, bro. It's fantastic movie. But here's the killer, guys, okay? Once we're in this 15-minute cities, and if you've got enough money to hire a good police force, you're going to be fine. But you know those guys who don't? They ain't going to have no police force. Those companies won't be hiring for character. They'll be hiring for licenses. I've seen this. I used to work for, before I worked for the British Embassy, I worked for an oil company, BP. And you had a lot of special forces guys working for BP, you know, doing private security for the oil executives, you know, taking them down onto the camps and stuff, fixing things. And then new legislation came out in, you know, that any British company, all their operatives have to have a security license. So the guys are like, what? I'm not doing that. That's gay. So they just binned it. So now all those special forces guys with maybe like 20, 30 years experience, they went to America. They did other things. They left them, you know, they left. But what happened then is we, you know, and I was there because I was like in a transitional role. So then we got all these like Eastern Europeans and just like young kids, but they had their license. So they were better, right? They had their license. They had their little piece of paper. And people will not hire for character. They will hire for licenses. Got the piece of paper? Tick. Pass the modules on the latest buzzword priorities? Tick. cheap enough to fit the budget, double tick. Whether you got the moral compass or courage under pressure or the instinct to do the right thing when no one's watching becomes a secondary asset. This is going to be a box ticking exercise. We've already seen it with PCSOs, community support officers, private security everywhere. Now you've got this state-backed license on the top of it. Suddenly, the boundary between public policing and privatized muscle. Do you know what? Should I start my own security company up? No, I can't be asked. Honestly, I can't be asked. But that's what it looks like. You know, it looks like privatized muscle. It's blurred the lines completely. The public will lose trust because the person stopping you at your car or knocking you at the door might not be a constable anymore. Just get a licensed operative from G4S, or, you know, I don't mean to pick on them, or whoever. Remember, I said this, like, you know, when I see things on the street and I just like instantly know how that's going to pan out. I was at the supermarket. It was either this summer or last summer or the summer before. And like two girls, you know the type, mid-20s, maybe early 30s. They had a shopping trolley full of booze and they were outside. I'm going to assume they were waiting for their boyfriends or whatever. And the guy who was the security guard in the store, he didn't speak English as his first language. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, when I'm in another country and I'm trying to speak their language, you know, I must sound ridiculous, you know, but English is my first language. Anyway. So the security guard came out, and he's really he was asking them to see their receipts. Now, at the tills, you get to choose, don't you? At the till, you get to choose: do you want the receipt or not? And you're like, I'm not taking that. Just going to fill my pocket up, or end up in that, or end up in the glove box in your car, and then you're going to have to throw them all away. I don't take my receipt unless it's something electronic. You might want it, and it might break. But these girls, I mean, fair play to the girls. They were like giving him quite a lot of attitude. And he went back inside. But where does that overreach stop? Because that's clearly overreach, right? He doesn't have any authority outside the store. So where is the authority overreach? What's stopping him then from following them to their car and asking to see the receipt? Okay, all right, whatever. What's different between him following them all the way home to their house and then asking them for the receipt? None. There's no difference. And, you know, the girls, they were young girls. They had quite a lot of attitude. And I think he wished he'd have not come out. But can you imagine if that was a vulnerable lady, maybe with her kids, scared, at nighttime, raining? How does that interaction go? This isn't about this isn't about raising standards. It's about control and cost cutting, dressed up as reforms. Senior officers are already warning it's going to be expensive and time consuming. Pulling people. Sean, there's a violent crime. Hang on a minute. I've got to do this online thing. Oh, I can't come yet because I've not got my license yet. Oh, God, I made a mistake. Oh, the internet's gone. It's not about raising standards. It's about control and cost cutting dressed up. Senior officers already warning it's going to be expensive, time consuming, pulling people off the streets, more training while they're short-handed as it is. But the real cost is our shared sense that the police are our public servants, not profit-driven license holders. And that is what they're going to become, guys. I promise you, that is what they're going to become, profit-driven license holders. Right, guys, let me jump back up here. Martin Quinn is saying, you don't need to grow food. Walk down your garden through the woods of the allotment. They will let you have some. You'll provide them with beer. Listen, I provide everything. I want to be Raven the provider. Raven the provider. Sean, any updates on Ukraine and Iran? Do you know what? There was an update I was going to share with you guys about Ukraine and how bad it is. But when I looked at the article, I've already told you about it. So let me share this with you. But I've already told you about this maybe 2 weeks ago. I'll share this quickly with you from Reuters. So Russian air attack knocks out power for over 1 million Ukrainians. Now, the article goes on, and it's talking about how the Russians are targeting these key hubs. So back in the Soviet days, back in the good old Soviet days, they built centralized heating hubs, and those centralized heating hubs were subsidized by the government. So places like Kiev, for example, where it gets really cold, if the mercury drops below a certain level, and I don't know what it is, but if the mercury drops below a certain level, the city council, they will take over the heating. So they will say, right, we're turning the heating on now, so we are going to pay for that heating. Remember, the Ukrainians can do this because they have they produce their own energy, right? They produce a shit ton of gas, so it's very easy for the Ukrainians to do this. You know, they can fire these big furnaces, and then all those apartment blocks will get heating piped into them. They're huge things. Now, the problem with that is that they're massive targets for enemy strikes. And once those things are targets for enemy strikes, you take out that centralized heating block, the whole place has gone down. And with Iran, there's no real updates on Iran at the moment. The ships are moving closer, and I think when they're in strike range, I think they will strike. April Lee is saying online reporting is a waste of time. It is. I've done this. It's all box ticking. It's all box ticking, guys. When I was in the army as well, you needed to do your every year you had to do like you had to do certain like course like presentations every year, and it was a faff. It was an absolute faff. But yeah, it is. You have to do the same thing every year. Albanians have got right. I don't know. Listen, I need to start reading that. US President's British Jewish attorney, Robert Garson, says UK no longer safe. Claims Trump would welcome persecuted Jews. State Department does not respond to request from comment. I don't know about Jews going over to America. What about persecuted Brits? What about persecuted Christians? Martin Quinn is saying Russia has drawn a line where they want to keep, and they will stop the war as long as Ukraine does not join the EU. I don't think there's a line being drawn at the moment. You know, let's have a look on the war map. Let's have a quick look on the war map. Let me refresh this. Stop, refresh. Yeah. So you guys know, right? You guys know you've been following me for a while. I've been documenting the war in Ukraine. I've been telling you guys what's coming. In fact, let me take Martin Quinn's comment off. So, the front line is not stopped. It's not stopped at all. This town here, Pokrovsk, I mean, this is only the latest town, right? This is only the latest town to fall. Let's just rewind this a little bit. Right, so we'll go back to when Pokrovsk wasn't taken, and I'll tell you when that was. So beginning of November, maybe. Let's go back there. 1st of November. You know, even the 1st of November, it looks like it's gone. So this was the ground on the 1st of November. Just, you know, and this is happening all over the front line. Watch how quickly the Russians are closing this up. And this is happening all over the front line. And there really is no stopping it. Now, where the Russians are right now, there is nothing on the ground to... there's no reason on the ground they would want to stay there. It's literally just open farmland. Now, the main hubs, like the strategic hubs, like this area here, like this area here. That's literally nothing but open farmland. You know, there's nothing there. So why would you want to take that? There's nothing there, literally nothing there. So if you come here, so let me just give you guys a little, I don't know if you guys can see this. So Zaporizhia, you've got big nuclear power plant. Dnipro, you have heavy steel production, basically heavy machining, you know, metal production in Dnipro. Kremenchuk, you have the world's biggest xenon gas production facility, because that goes back to the Cold War. Xenon gas is used massively in lasers. So anything that uses lasers, you need xenon gas, especially for laser cutting. What else have we got? Right. And then we've got Kiev, which is the absolute jewel. You know, and Kiev's very particular, because I can definitely see a scenario where you have Kiev, which is bisected more or less down the middle by the River Dnipro. You can really see a scenario where you have this side Russians, and then you have this side, what would you call it? You know, non-Russians. So, you know, that's where I can see it, because these rivers, they're very difficult to get over. They are really difficult to get over a river. Strategically, tactically, it's difficult to fight over water. So as far as I'm concerned, until the Russians, well, two scenarios, one's likely, the other one's unlikely. Until the Russians manage to get to the River Dnipro, I don't see any, you know, stopping in the fighting. And I do think that could happen relatively soon, because of the ground at the moment. It is really cold, guys. It's been like constantly, like the warming. Like I was talking to my friend, he's saying it's getting a bit warmer now. It's getting up to -2. He said they had -2 the other day. That's still well below freezing, and things are not going to thaw out at -2. But the ground for the last month has been like, on average, it's been -13, which has made, remember how I said this whole area is just open farmland? Well, that open farmland, when you want to drive tanks over that open farmland, when it's soggy, it's really boggy, all right? So you can't get those tanks over it. When you've got maybe 10, 15 feet of ice, it's like concrete. Those tanks go straight over it. John is saying, as a British Jewish organisation, we share a common desire that the UK must protect and support the need of asylum. Well, I think, no, I agree. I absolutely agree. I agree. But what we have in the United Kingdom is not asylum. Cindy Archers is saying, I don't get why they want the West to fall. If the West falls, then trade and aid stops for poorer countries. So why are they trying to destroy most of the world? I think we're seeing a new financial system coming in. I think we're seeing a new financial system coming in. I think there's going to be literally all the conspiracies that we're being told about, you know, new financial system whereby we get universal basic income. And if you get universal basic income, you don't really need. Okay, so the financial, we are in late stage capitalism now, right? We are in late stage capitalism right now. That's the reality, where all the money and effort and money, you try and start a business up now in the United Kingdom, it's virtually impossible. You know, so much regulation, so much red tape. You need this, you need that. It's almost impossible to start a business in the United Kingdom. That's because we're in late stage capitalism. Look at the housing market, right? Most private rented houses now are owned by bigger investment companies, right? So you don't get that. What's the word I'm looking for? That movement anymore. People are just really tied down. And because we're in late stage capitalism, at some point, something will break. Something will absolutely break. It will, guys. Something will break. Now, when late stage capitalism breaks, there's going to be a, sorry, I've just read Andrew. Right, I'm not right. Andrew Rushton. He's just trolling me on the chat. Andrew Rushton. I'm not gonna bite anymore. I'm not gonna bite anymore to Andrew Rushton. So when you're in late stage capitalism, and it will fall because people will revolt. People will say, you know what? I've got no money. I've got no hope of getting money. I can't have it. I've got no food. I've got nowhere to live. Yeah, what's the point in this anymore? So there needs to be a new financial system. Now, this is already coming. The new financial system is coming slowly, whereby, universal basic income, it's going to happen. It's going to absolutely happen. They will force people onto it. It's looking like we're heading towards a global conflict on an industrial scale. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me it doesn't look like we're heading towards a war with Russia. And when all this has happened and there's all this chaos and carnage, the outcome, so when we get to the other end of it, this, there's gonna be some sort of universal basic income. There's gonna be some sort of like 15-minute cities or micro cities, and we're already seeing these pop up. Literally, in a town like not even an affluent town. I'm not gonna say its name. Like a couple of maybe 3-4 miles away. There's a housing development just finished, and they've got a sign on it: join our gated community. Gated community is a precursor to a 15-minute city, right? Because these gated communities, people are scared, people are worried. So now a lot of these housing estates and the developments, in fact, you know what? You can do this yourself, right? You can do this yourself. If you see a new housing development built in the United Kingdom, it's quite easy. They have one road in and one road out. Why? Because they're going to be gated communities, right? That's how they're building them now. They're building them for control. So that's why, and if the West falls, then there's going to be no choice. There's going to be absolutely no choice. And Cindy Archers is saying the gates aren't that high. No, they're not. The gates are not that high at all. So that's why I think it's happening, guys. I do. Right, listen, ladies and gentlemen, the crux of this live stream, has been the British FBI is coming. It's here. There's a government warning. Migrant police forces are coming, and wild times ahead. Now, I've just explained to everybody how I think that method of travel is going to work, from the licensing exercise from the police, whereby the police are no longer going to be are no longer going to be public servants. They are going to be license chasers, where it doesn't really matter how good of a police officer you are, how fast you can run, how many arrests you can make, because if you ain't got the little license, you ain't going to be a police officer. And that's what's coming, guys. Like it's I remember Edward. Have you guys watched the Edward Snowden on Joe Rogan? So Edward Snowden on Joe Rogan, he's talking about the real conspiracies are not these things happening in back rooms. The real conspiracies are those things that come out in the public. They get parliamentary approval. They're passed into law and they're legislated. They're the real conspiracies. They are the real conspiracies. And this is what I'm talking about right now, guys, okay? It's out in the headlines today. British FBI to take over police forces in the United Kingdom. The number of police forces in England and Wales will be significantly cut. Does that sound good to anyone? It doesn't sound good to me. Every police officer in England and Wales will have to have a license. They will have to have a license to practice. And, this is the beginning of the end, really. This is the beginning. And, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but if you guys have watched that Edward Snowden interview with Joe Rogan, and, and he's saying it's not, The real conspiracies, the real things that are affecting people are not, you know, they're not hidden in back rooms. They're the things that get public announcement from the Home Secretary, Shabina Mahmood, who is promising to oversee the biggest shakeup of policing in decades. Can you imagine it, right? Can you imagine, right? Can you imagine you're, I don't know. Can you imagine you're there, right? And somebody comes out to arrest you and they don't speak English, but they've got a license? Because that's coming, right? I mean, look, it's only a matter of time, isn't it, before, you know, those licenses, you know, oh, somebody's like, oh, why do they need to be in, why do the license, why does the license application form need to be in English? It's a bit racist. And you're like, what? English is the native language. Ah, yeah, but not in some communities. Right, okay, you can have that, but you can only, okay, right, yeah, right, okay, just a mistake. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how crackers it is? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, listen, guys, I'm going to close this down now. I am going to close this down now. I'm going to jump into, I'm going to go to my local farmer today, and I'm going to ask him, I'm going to say, mate, can I buy stuff from you? Like, I don't know what he produces. You know, I see him in the tractor all the time. I don't know what he produces, but I'm going to go and ask him if he can, if I can buy stuff off him. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close this down now. I think I'll be back on later this afternoon. I may be talking about aliens, who knows? And if not, I'll be back on tonight at 8 o'clock. And I bid you good evening, good morning. I hope everybody has a fantastic Sunday dinner, and I'll see you guys later.